is Wednesday, June 26, 2024, and the time is 5:32 p.m. Will you be taking the roll call tonight, Brian?
Yes. Yep. Hold on one second. I still have too many windows open. Trying to fix that. Okay. Mike Picardi.
Here.
Stacy.
Present.
Susan.
Here.
Dr. Kelly.
Here.
I think Carl's joining us right now. Just doing attendance, Carl. Can you hear us?
Hmm.
Good. Chris.
Here.
Here. Oh.
I don't think I see Rich Viscay, but let's skip him for now. No Don Chiaramella. We'll note that in a second. Maybe a little bit.
Oh,
John's here.
John's
Sorry,
here.
Don. Didn't see you. Nick.
Here.
Thank you, Nick. Susan noted Mayor Keefe is not here. Tom. I don't think I saw Tom Skorowski. John
Yes, sir.
is here. Council President Cogliandro, I think I saw. Yep.
Here.
Don Martelli.
I am here.
Josh Miranda.
Here.
Excellent. Sounds good. So I think we do not have the minutes ready for approval. We're going to distribute the minutes for the next meeting. So the only housekeeping we have tonight is invoices, and actually invoice singular. I'm going to share my screen really quick. So as noted last month, this was the final invoice for the feasibility study. The final invoices for Left Field Consigli were processed last month, and this $231,796.78 Perkins Eastman invoice officially bills out all of their contractual services for the feasibility study. Next month, we'll start billing against the project that was approved in the last few months. This brings our financial business for the feasibility study to completion.
So motion to accept invoice for Perkins Eastman for the month of May's professional services, $2,031,796.78.
Second.
Second.
Sounds good. Let me just jot that down. So that was Stacy. And who did I hear the second from?
It was me, Martelli.
Done. Yep. Sounds good. On the motion, Mike Picardi.
Yes.
Stacy.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Dr. Kelly.
Yes.
Carl. Didn't hear you, Carl. Yep.
That was a yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Chris.
Yes.
Rich Viscay is absent, I believe, still, unless is the 628-626-823 number a committee member? There's a phone number here.
This is Jason Flood from Consigli.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Just checking if it was Rich. Don Chiaramella.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Mayor Keefe is absent. Tom Skorowski is absent. John.
Yes.
Councilor Cogliandro.
Yes.
Don Martelli.
Yes.
And Josh Miranda.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me just make 100% sure that was all the busy work we had tonight. It was. So we're going to move into agenda item 4, a design development update. I'm going to start with a design development update related to some building plan updates, and then we're going to go into a bit of a permitting update. Dawn, would you like me to drive, or do you want to share the screen?
No, you can drive if you have it. I have it open, but if you...
Yep, I have it here somewhere. Let me
Okay.
share my screen, and I'm going to go full screen with this.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. Happy summer. Since finishing up schematic design and starting to, roll into design development, there were a couple of major pieces of the building that we felt as the design team were a little unresolved. So we took a little bit of time to look at a few of them and just want to give you some updates today. So no, that's fine that you went to that, Brian. So how these slides are laid out, this is the schematic design floor plan. This is what we previously had, just for reference in case we needed to go back. But what I wanted to point out, next to the secondary entry, the bus drop at the bottom of the screen on the south of the building, facing the roadway, we had the kitchen kind of front and center, and the receiving was below. You can see the little arrow to the left, and that kind of, because the grade, because we berm up to get students to come in at the main level, which is obviously over the parking, it drops down, and the receiving was always intended to be down at the parking level, which one isn't ideal, two wasn't fully resolved in schematic design, and three kind of at the face from the street of your building. So if you want to go to the next slide, Brian, we as a team felt like there could be an improvement in moving the receiving to the back of the building, the back being sort of the railroad side of the building, and getting the kitchen and servery off that front face and bringing some educational program to that space that's highly visible. So what we did was, this is just a quick little 3D of the major program that moved, kind of sliding a few of the tech spaces, maker, robotics, and what that flipped with was the school store and marketing. And then the big change is moving the kitchen and servery over near the locker rooms. Now that the locker rooms are under the auditorium, we felt like that could be sort of a back of house scenario that the kitchen and servery could also be part of. So if you want to go to the next slide, Brian, I have the design development ground floor plan. So you can see that the locker rooms are still under the auditorium, which is at the top side of the plan. We basically took that whole back of what used to be the arts wing, which now is up with the auditorium at the second floor, and made that sort of back of house. So storage, receiving, kitchen, obviously the cooler, freezer, all of that would be back at the back of the building. And we've moved maker, robotics to the front, or the entry side of the building, and slid around some marketing, hospitality, the restaurant, to all sort of feed off of the heart of the school. So that was the big move, and we just wanted to let you guys know what we thought was an improvement as far as trucks coming, not having to navigate the same roadway as the bus and then back into this lower delivery, which would have required taking everything, paper goods, food, anything that's still computers, anything that's delivered to the building would have had to come in at the garage level. And now it will come in at the first floor level off the north side of the building, or the railroad side. Thank you, Brian. Nothing else has majorly changed. Entries are all the same, gyms in the same spot. This does affect a little bit upper floors, and I'll run through those quickly. Same scenario. Second floor schematic design, if you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. So this is what we previously had. So all that art and tech and music went up with the auditorium. Art was always there, but tech and now music to feed into the stage and auditorium. And the 9th grade CAF was at the south because of the kitchen and servery. But once we moved those logistically, we needed to move the 9th grade cafeteria because the servery needs a direct connection from below the main servery and kitchen up to the second floor 9th grade cafeteria. So if you want to go to the axon, just a quick, we moved the cafeteria and servery over above where we are proposing it on the ground floor, and then took some of the art and digital spaces and moved those to the above where the maker and robotics is on the first floor, kind of the south face of the building, right between the academic wings, which we thought was a nice fit, feeding off the heart of the school and connecting to academics. So if you want to go to the floor plans, Brian, the only other move we made, the computer science, which is in the lower right, we put that into the academic wing and brought video and digital off of the heart of the school up near the auditorium, up between the upper part of the gym and the auditorium. Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of a minor flip, but seemed to make sense with the video and digital connecting to the heart of the school. So you can see the art and digital down at the south. And then the 9th grade CAF kind of looks out over the main entry of the building, the main plaza. And obviously, if you see that elevator, can you point to the elevator, Brian? Perfect. That feeds directly down. It's just for food from the kitchen and the lower servery to the upper servery. And that brown square is the servery. I should have labeled that. Apologies. Did someone have a question, or was I just getting background noise? Must have been background.
When it's time for questions, I have a question, but.
Okay. Well, you can either interrupt me and ask as it's relevant to the floor plans, or I can get through all of them. There's not much left. And then I can come back. Why don't we do that, John?
Please.
All right, great. Brian, next slide, 3rd floor. Mostly about the media center. And if you want to go to the Axon, here we looked at this 3rd floor south, kind of above where the kitchen used to be on the ground floor, used to be STEM and writing centers. We've moved those off the heart of the school and created half of the media commons to be at the south. And when we get to the 4th floor, you'll see there's kind of a double height space and a 4th floor connection. So that media commons that's on the bottom of the screen there will actually be 2-story and connect, and it will have hopefully really nice views of, and we think, the water in between the buildings towards Revere Beach. And then we took guidance from the 4th floor, which was right above where that media commons is being proposed. Again, I said we put some of the space on the 4th floor. We took the guidance, which was on the 4th floor, and moved it off the heart of the school to the 3rd floor. So that's what that other red square on the right is. If you want to go to the floor plan, the media commons sort of split. We've always had it that way. The STEM and writing feeds off the heart of the school, and you can see the guidance suite off the heart of the school. And then lastly, the 4th floor, that's the old plan. You can see the guidance suite is all those red squares at the bottom. And spoiler alert, I already told you we moved the media center up there. So if you want to go to the next slide, that's all we did. So there's kind of a 2-story. If you want to go to the plan, you can see the side closest, that white X is like the 2-story from below. And then the media commons connects to the corridor. So just kind of a nice double height space for, stacks of books, reading areas, students on computers, that sort of thing. Figured that would be a better location, nicer views and connections back to the beach from the 4th floor. So that's really it. I do show a sketch from our landscape architects at the receiving at the back, not fully fleshed out. Carl and I had a laugh, one dumpster, just not sufficient. There's plenty more, but just looking at some of the grading and how that would feed off of the back of the school. So basically they'd come around from peel off and not turn to, drop students off, but come around the back of the building and then back in to the receiving dock. So let's take questions. John.
First comment, on the first image you show, I would just love if it's possible to add a compass, or just put the streets that which side of the building each is.
Sure. By compass, do you mean, did you say street names, or do you want a north arrow?
Either. I don't know. I mean,
Typically
I know what north and east facing is on the site, but not everybody does. But I just,
yep.
when I was
no. So if you're, as it stands, just for your reference, and thank you for pointing that out, we do typically do them, and this was done. Just apologies, it should be there. But north is directly screen north. So our classroom wings go east-west, and north is to the top, and south is to the bottom, just for reference. And so the rotary is off the screen to the bottom, and the railroad tracks, the commuter rail tracks, are to the top of the screen. And I know there's not a site plan here, and you're newer to the committee, so I should not take for granted that everyone knows this. So apologies, and I'll do better next time.
No. So the south side of the building is science through. It starts at science and works its way to the right, and that faces the plaza.
That the science rooms on the lower left, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, those
that faces out to the roadway. There's actually some tennis courts, and that's where the drop continues to go out to the light at the road. So this is the side that faces.
That's east, right?
Hold on.
That's why I asked. It's all good. I won't waste any more time on this call with you.
Yes, the entrance is on the east side.
Yeah, the main entrance is on the east.
Gotcha.
That's
Perfect. Thank you.
correct. Yep.
Thank you. And so the next question was, I see junior ROTC on ground floor, then I see it on a higher level. Do they have sections of the school? Is that?
So this is their, the connection to the gymnasium is their drills space. And upstairs are their classrooms, their storage, there, thank you. I believe they have 3 classrooms. Those little squares are changing rooms. They've got uniform storage. So a bunch of that kind of left-hand side of the second floor gymnasium is junior ROTC space.
Right on. And then the other question I had was, I see as far as special education, I see it on multiple floors, but on the higher levels, and I don't want to make a direct correlation between disability and special education, right? But do we have, are there elevators for folks that may require that? Okay.
Yep. So Brian, there's a elevator bank there with 2 elevators. There's also one kind of catty cornered off the heart of the school. So 4 passenger elevators, plus we have the freight elevator to the kitchen that I mentioned earlier, but it could be used for freight, but it's really intended to just be for servery and kitchen connection.
Jump back down.
Thank you.
So you can see those same elevators coming off the part of the school in both spots, 4 elevators.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments?
I had a quick question.
Yep. Who's that, Don?
Yes, Don Martelli. Quick
Hi.
question on the shifting of the cafeteria for the 9th grade. In terms of square footage, does that change seating capacity for students at all?
Nope. It's always sort of been loosely off of the heart of the school, which is part of the grossing factor, but that yellow is exactly the same square footage. We have not touched the square footage. We've certified it with the MSBA. We're actually not allowed to change it. So it's identical. Same with the servery.
And that's probably a good point, just process wise. Some of you folks, like the approval we got from MSBA really locks in the square footage of all these rooms. We have some degree of flexibility of reconfiguring them. The further we go along, the less flexibility we'll have, but we can't change their size at this point.
Yeah, it was more in reference of like you're going from 200 seats to 100 seats, which doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like it may be 1 or 2 here and there, but generally it's going to be the same capacity.
It won't even be 1 or 2. It'll be exactly the same amount of seats.
Perfect.
Yep.
And these all spill out into, I mean, all this open area other than where the X's are, which, you know,
Yes.
open to below. These areas are all envisioned as sort of being able to spill out into the platforms in the heart of the school.
Great.
Brian, can you just go back to you have like an isometric plan there? Yeah, I just wanted to see it. Thank you.
This is cut at the second floor level, so you can sort of see we're up into the auditorium and looking down into the gym here.
Right. That's kind of the gym volume that you'd look down on. Those are the junior ROTC classrooms for reference, like the plan we were looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
I
drill
think there's
space,
2 health and
drill
3
space below.
junior.
Yep.
Yeah, 2 health, 3 junior ROTC.
Don, what do you think the capacity of the auditorium would be approximately?
What are we at, Nazra? Are we at 1,000? I don't want to speak out of it.
At least 850, but we can get you a number as we shape it more. Yeah. At least 850, probably hopefully more, but we'll get back to you soon as we flush it out and actually lace it out.
So what does the foot traffic look like on an event with 1,000 people entering the school? What is their path?
Yep. So they come in the front entry, presumably. If they park below, and we can talk about access and that sort of thing, I think from a day-to-day standpoint, that's intended to be staff parking under, and they'd have fobs to get in the elevators and get up, or the stairwells and get up. I think the intent, unless we talk about access from the garage, which maybe we do on an event evening, if you want people to park directly below, then maybe the elevators are not keyed for that evening, but come in the main entry. And basically, you're going to feed off that heart of the school on the first floor. You're going to go up the community stair or up any of those 4 elevators we pointed out earlier. Thank you, Brian. You make a really good Vanna. And that leads you to, if you want to go to the third floor, Axon, or second, I'm sorry. Yep. So you'll come up the community stair or the elevators. And what we're envisioning is kind of a pre-function space off of that sort of smaller opening in the ground or in the floor off of the where the freshman cafeteria is, that they could gather and wait for, you know, kind of the doors to open and then feed into the auditorium. Or they could go up that stairwell that's just under the or above the V of the servery. That's actually see the word server. Yep, that's a stairwell up to the third floor. And we're hoping to connect the upper floor of the auditorium to the third floor. So there's actually two different ways you could get in. Yeah, right now it's not, but Nazar and I have been talking through how that'll happen.
Yep.
So up at the balcony level, provide accessible seating and access up there as well. So you kind of split between the second and third floors.
Okay, so I guess same question for the gym. Say we're having a home basketball game with away fans and our own fans coming into the school.
Yep, great question. So they, again, through the front door, there'll be visitor parking. But again, we can talk about if you are going to allow people to park under the building. Otherwise, they'd come in through the front door into the heart of the school. The gym's right at the main level. There's a whole pile of doors on hold opens, that kind of corridor. There's a firewall there from a logistics standpoint. That's how we have to build the building. It's so large, but all those doors will be on mags and magnetic hold opens, and you'll enter through that big vestibule, Brian, if you want to just walk like right through. Yep. Go up into the gym. So off the heart of the school and right into the gym.
So there's no exit from the gym to the direct outside or the auditorium to the direct outside.
There's stairwells.
The gym does. Or could, because it's on the courtyard level.
Mm-hmm. So the courtyard, yep, is kind of that in between the classroom bar and the gym. You could easily, there's stairwells on kind of either bookend of the gym, and we could easily have those as direct access if that's desired. Yep. So you could bring people through the courtyard if that's, you know, maybe they park in the garage and then come up through the courtyard and directly in. They don't have to go through the heart of the school. That's kind of a operations and logistics thing that we are providing the ability to do either. And you can tell us as far as key cards and fobs and, you know, the ability to lock and unlock doors, or to make one look more like an entryway, like a formal, you know, front entry to the gym, if that's desired. We could certainly do that.
Okay, just back to the...
I think that's a really good point that we should talk about as a committee, how we want to envision that down the road. Like, one of the challenges we have with the existing high school is there are so many entrances and exits that we can't manage them all. Mm-hmm. And one of the ideas that we had talked about a lot has been to make this building be a community resource when school is not in session. Mm-hmm. And that's why we wanted, like, most of the classroom space to be in those wings so that we could isolate those off and not use them off of school hours, but still have some access to the community to the health center and the gym and the auditorium and all of those other pieces. But I think that we do need a larger conversation with our group about how we envision that now that we're at this point, and what it means for safety and where there should be doors, and do we want to have separate entrances so people can go right into the gym or the theater like you're saying, or do we not, you know?
Mm-hmm. I'm more concerned about the path of a wandering guest.
Yep.
Like I don't see them, like, without multiple bodies, someone saying you can't take a left here, you can't take a right here, you can't go up this stairway. I'd like to see some type of visual path that just shows, you know, here's where they're going to come in, here's how they're going to get in the gym. Now, at this point, they're going up 2 flights of stairs or a flight and a half. And it's just, I don't know.
The gym's on the main floor. So
okay, so
the main entry, they're not going up any stairs, Carl.
Okay. Okay.
But the gym. I was putting to the theater they are, right?
The theater they are. Yep. I just wanted to be clear that, yep.
So maybe that's something, Brian Dakin, that we can put on an agenda for a deeper discussion to really be able to look into those different areas that we're envisioning to be more community resources, and what the logistics of that would be. so that we can make these decisions that Carl's talking about and I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do is I think these axonometric views are good for this. So maybe what we'll do for the next month meeting is sort of, Dawn, you and I can work on just sort of highlighting the path for a gym event, an auditorium event, and showing you where, there's cutoffs. Like you can see these little walls in the classroom wing. We can almost draw a box around the heart of the school that
What's
a
public
wandering person might have access to, and we can discuss if those stops are in the right spot, etc.
Yep, that's an easy graphic we can do to get the conversation going.
And Dawn, on the stage, the backstage, where there would be kind of building sets for drama shows and stuff like that, what type of access is there to the backstage for dropping stuff? I know the last show we did, it actually involved a boat that came in through a double exterior door. There's a ton of wood. They built an extension to a stage. They built there's a lot of carpentry and materials that get in and out of the backstage of what we hope to have a productive drama program. I don't know how we're gonna. What do you see? What type of path do you see us taking to bring materials like that to that area?
Yeah, that's a good point, Carl. When it was on the main floor, before we pulled the auditorium up a floor, we had a big garage door into the, it's the theater room, right, Nazra? That's on the upper
it wasn't, yeah. So we have the theater room, but even before to the stage, we had just large double doors. Like we can make them 10 foot tall, but like more than 3 foot wide each sleeve. So we can have a very big door under the stage. The corridors are pretty wide, and we can basically the freight elevator to the kitchen, we can figure out where it opens. If it opens on two sides, so it opens on the corridor side, so materials can come up. We can find a way basically, but the doors to the stage are pretty big, and we are working on that.
That's another thing we can mark up, Carl. I think the short answer is stuff from grade. I'm going to click back. If it wasn't built, supplies would come in through loading, ultimately go up this freight elevator, and then load back into the stage level. But that's another version of a diagram we can do to make it a little more literal and talk through it.
Yep. Okay. Great questions.
New hand, old hand up.
Yep, hand up. As we're going through potential visuals to add to our punch list here, you may also want to consider if people are going to the gym or an auditorium, an event, in case of an emergency, exit points for those particular instances, right? High school game between Revere and Everett, and all of a sudden there's something that goes off. What do those exit points look like as well, just so from a public safety perspective?
Sure.
Will do.
Good point. Yep. We can highlight that. We plan for it, but it's not always visually shown. So
yeah, right. And not everybody follows the rules either, but at least you have it online just when the question is undoubtedly asked by a concerned parent.
No, absolutely. It's a great point. Thank you.
And I mean, maybe Don, we do the same with assuming some sort of courtyard event too. So we can put our heads together on where the real assembly space is in here to highlight for this discussion.
Yep.
Yep. Happy to. Anything else from a design standpoint? Does anyone think this doesn't make sense?
Two quick questions.
Yep.
Sure. First is there a version of this with dimensions? I know like way back there were like dimensions for classrooms and whatnot, but I haven't seen that in a while, just to kind of refresh or see some of the new spaces.
Sure. Hey Nazara, can we do the Revit plans? We can send it out through Brian to the group.
Yeah.
They're less designy. These are kind of dumbed down. One, simply from a scale standpoint, you would get wrapped up in, if these weren't sort of simplified and colored, you would not be able to find your way around the building because it's so large. But we do have like documents that we can share out if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. And then I think there's, besides like gym and auditorium, like I think about robotics and like our need to or my need to be able to supervise an entry point directly in, but I imagine there's also other activities that run late that having an entrance and exit for students that a teacher or coach or whoever can directly supervise, just thinking about those areas too. Because often kids are coming and going, and my kids will go get food and then come back for meetings and things like that. So just I think like rock ensemble would be another one. I assume meets pretty late sometimes, especially when they're preparing for shows and things like that.
Sure. Yep. And I think those, Josh, I think as we show the diagrams of what how the heart of the school is cordoned off after hours will help a lot with that. Keeping in mind that even if you were a teacher and you had a fob, you could still get through some of the doors that are going to shut on these corridors to sort of shut off these wings. But if someone was just a member of the public and didn't have an access card or a fob, they couldn't get behind those doors. But most of these buildings, the way we can adjust these doors, if students and staff can have as much access as you need after hours.
And I'd also like to disclaimer that the drawings that we send out are they're always a work in progress until they go out to bid. So things may shift and move, but in general, that like we can give you a snapshot of where we are if that's helpful. So I just want to be clear that you can imagine we've done a version of the kitchen to make sure it all works, but it's not like, it's not fully baked. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there that, on any given day, pieces and parts may shift and move, walls may change, but we can certainly send a snapshot of this where we are and let you digest it.
Yeah, I think like one thing I'm thinking about, I see like the secondary entry near robotics, and if that's like 2 sets of doors with a side door into robotics, that's something I could keep open. But if it's not designed that way, then
it doesn't currently have doors from the vestibule into the space. But those are the sort of things as we evolve the design. We will have focus group meetings with you and others. We were trying to do them because of the timing of things. We weren't able to get it done before the end of school. So it's likely to be at the beginning of the next school year, unless people make themselves available this summer, which I doubt. Most people are not around. That's the sort of exactness of each type of major space that we'll get into in those groups, not necessarily in this big group. So just so you know, this big group is like big design decisions, like, yes, makes sense to move the kitchen and the receiving. But as it relates to, doors and where they are in robotics, we'll meet with you individually, like our team and you and anyone on your team to talk through that. So that's forthcoming. And it feels like a while since we've done it because it was so long ago, because the process and how things have played out. So thank you for your patience. We'll definitely get there.
Is there office space for your school resource offices? Is that considered guidance or admin?
Yeah, it's off the admin. And that big admin square kind of in the middle, right near the, it's that lower right-hand corner.
Awesome.
Yep.
And so just to kind of calibrate where we are, we're still really at the point where we've just finished schematic design, the big giant overlook. Now that we're getting into design development, that's where we're going to need to start having conversations with students, with teachers, like with the gym teachers in particular about the layout of the gym, with Major Bowker and Sergeant Major Callender and Major Burke, about what the JROT space needs to look like. And we'll get into all of those details as we move through design development. But also, Josh, to your point, I'm going to go back to what I said about the school before and the security and how many doors we want and where do we want them. And we have to think long term about, it's awesome that we have this phenomenal, incredible robotics instructor, Josh Miranda, with us right now. But 30 years from now, that might not be the case. And the city should be making decisions now with all of that in mind,
Makes sense. And as we move through the focus group meetings, Dr. Kelly, like that's why we ask that like leadership is there to sort of, say what makes sense, what doesn't, because of course every teacher is going to think for their immediate needs, which is obviously what they're there to do, but also to think long-term and what's best for the building. So as we have those meetings, either Dr. Kelly or someone she designates or Chris, someone will be involved in those meetings and participating in the bigger conversation because they know the whole building. So
I also think it's probably important as we start inviting people to join in these conversations to like to lead with that like
Yeah.
where we are in the process, kind of what Diane just explained. Like I think that kind of people's knee-jerk reaction is to see this and be like, oh, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And I think there's a way that we can kind of temper people's like expectations for where we are in the process and like what is confirmed versus what is still in design mode. Like even though we say that, I think it's one of those things that like needs to just be said over and over and over again, and kind of will save time and confusion among people talking about it. So I just think there's like a PR component to how we talk about where we are in the process as we start to bring more folks into it.
So you will be happy to hear that we start every focus meeting with a disclaimer like that. And in a perfect world, if you are in the meetings, you will do it, because hearing it from you is, you know, certain things out of my mouth sound different than, and when the leadership is invested in part of the process, then they are starting to own it, which is really helpful from our end, right? So then someone can go to you and say, oh, I thought I heard this, or, you know, I thought about it after and need that. And to have leadership involved in those is really helpful from our end, because, you know, I can certainly say it, but it's always nice when leadership is participating. So for what it's worth, we'll figure that out when we get to the focus group meetings, who's involved. It's a huge time commitment. And often a building like this will be multiple days, multiple times, because we'll do it at least 2 more times. So
I'm not sure how to raise my hand. Here you go.
There you go.
Well, I keep me honest. I believe under some portion of this building there's parking. Where exactly is the parking? Under what part of the building?
It's under the entire thing plus the courtyard.
Under the courtyard, and the entire building has parking underneath it.
Yes. Am I wrong, Nazra? It still goes under where the auditorium used to be. We used to have the auditorium.
Yeah, it's under all of it. There's
Plus
a
the
little bit of bike storage, but yeah, it's under all of it and the courtyard.
There's there's a level of parking underneath this entire building.
Yes.
Yes. It has to, the building has to be raised. It's in the floodplain and it has to be raised. So we took the opportunity in having to sort of podium it and raise it. We have it up plus 15 feet to
awesome.
use that for parking.
That's great.
And I mean, that's something we are going to discuss a lot more, but it's something I'd like to disclaimer right now that to some degree, because of what Dawn just said, the reason that garage is there is because of flooding. It will flood. And how we handle that mechanically and maintenance wise is stuff we'll talk about. But from jump here, I think everyone's got to understand that in a major flooding event, not just it rained an inch last night, but in a major flooding event, the expectation is that there will be water flowing through this garage. It will be designed accordingly. And again, that's going to get a whole lot of technical attention and talks with Carl and maintenance and how to run the building. But I just, it's something people will forget. And the first time there is a flood event, I don't want you folks saying, you know, wow, that's a huge problem. It's designed to flood at the basement level.
Yep.
And I want to take a minute to apologize, John. In putting this together, I took for granted that everyone knows some of these things. I should have included a site plan and a parking plan. This is just like big program pieces that we're moving. And I had kind of lost track of the fact that we have a handful of new members that don't know it as well. So sorry. And next time I'll include a site plan, parking plan, and, you know, kind of give a bigger, back up and say, just a reminder, here's where it is on the site. Here's the parking level. So apologies for not doing that. This was sort of more of a program conversation, but we're getting deeper than that, which is totally fine. And typically I would have a site plan and a parking plan to show as well. So I'm sorry for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any opposition to us making these changes? Obviously, we'll work closely with food service and Carl for receiving and have many meetings about how that whole back of house will come together. That's not fully flushed out. It's just the space is currently, you know, shown. And we're already planning to meet with those guys if this is to go forward and flush all that out. I don't think we need any sort of vote, right, Brian? This is
Nope.
really kind of a nod of the head, like everyone's in agreement that this makes sense. So if
Yep.
that's the case, we will move forward with this direction and, you know, keep plugging away at design development.
Sounds good. If there are no other questions, we're going to jump into agenda item 5, a little overview.
1 second, Brian. I just want to recap.
Yep.
We will own for the next one sort of lock off and movement through for big events and assemblies, and then also share out the floor plans. So just as a takeaway, I just want to, yes? Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
You are welcome. The other agenda item we wanted to do tonight was just give a high-level overview of the schedule and how we plan on, when you hear us saying the plan is that we're going to be out there come next summer doing abatement and cleanup on the site, and then really building the building starting next fall before next winter. We wanted to sort of walk through that. And what I think is a good place to start based on some of the questions and Chris and Josh is the design development phase that we're in right now stretches through January. We then will go into a construction document phase that leads towards packages in next summer, fall, where we actually bid the building. So as we move from left to right in this diagram, we have less and less flexibility with major changes. I think probably the changes you saw tonight will probably be the last major space changes that we see. But that doesn't mean that we don't have months in front of us to work out all these details, to be meeting with staff, meeting with students, meeting with you folks. So in a way, this is sort of the debrief at the beginning of all the staff and student meetings we've got a whole long line of design development in front of us. We don't have to hand these documents to potential bidders until next summer, fall. You can see that there is a little bid effort at the end of the DD phase. That's just going to be bidding site prep, pulling up all the foundations that are out there, taking up some of the pavement, and getting ready to build the building. But what we wanted to go through tonight is, and we have some of our consultants that are working on the permitting process, LEC. I know Ann Martin is here from LEC, who's helping lead the charge with Claire from her office. And what we at least wanted to do is, you see the overall schedule on top with the months. As I scroll down these months and the dates will stay. We wanted to sort of talk through the very complex permitting process that supports this schedule. And Ann, if you're okay, I wouldn't mind turning it over to you to just sort of one by one go through these. I'll keep my eye out for hands up or questions, but we wanted to give you a flavor of all of the various steps we'll be working towards this year and next year to get all the state and local environmental permits to build this building on this site.
Sure. I see that John has his hand up. Is that left over from the plan discussion, or did he have a question about?
I think that's a leftover.
Okay.
I'm going to lower.
Yeah, it's leftover. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I don't know how to get rid of it. Sorry.
I didn't even know I could put your hand down. I just put your hand down for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I just wanted to give you the opportunity if you had a question about the first part of what Brian just talked about. So the first row of so I guess the first thing I want to say is that we have completed, I don't see it on here, but we completed review and approval by the Conservation Commission of the wetland boundaries through issuance of an ORAD. That was issued right on schedule, right according to our schedule, maybe a week before on the schedule. The next thing that we'll roll into is starting to have some pre-application meetings with some of the state regulatory agencies and with the Conservation Commission to actually start talking about the design and talking about the future permitting process, getting some input from them prior to entering into the MEPA process. That's going to happen in July and August. Also, mid-July, we submit an EJ advance notification. It's part of the MEPA process. and we'll be filing the first phase of the MIPA process. There's 3 phases. First phase will file in September of this year and receive a certificate from them in October. And then we'll begin the second phase, which is a draft environmental impact report. And that will be submitted in mid-February of 2025 with a certificate in March. And that will be followed by a final environmental impact report that will be filed in June, receiving a certificate in August of 2025. Parallel to that process, we'll be filing a few interim filings with the Conservation Commission for any of the exploratory borings or geotechnical borings that need to be conducted in advance as part of the design. We'll be filing some notice of intents for some early work to remove building foundations or pavement or utilities to get the site ready for construction. That's all going to happen somewhere around April 2025 to like September 2025, depending on exactly what the needs are and the timing is for that work.
And I don't need to jump in, but I do think that's a key in that if we're talking high level, we can't start building the building until we're done with MIPA. But we can get out there and start cleaning up the site. So we do anticipate getting out there next summer before we're done with MIPA. Once MIPA is done, we can start actually putting in utilities, digging for foundations, starting to pour concrete, etc. So just as people talk about it, according to this plan and what we're trying to do, there will be work on site before we're done with MIPA, but it's not going to be building the building. It's going to be deleting what's there effectively. And there's a lot down there. Having just walked around down there again for a few hours today, there's a vast amount of foundations and things down there that we need to get rid of.
Right. So amidst the MIPA process, we will be filing with the Conservation Commission the filing to permit and approve the school building in April of 2025. That in the MIPA process, that drops us just after receiving the draft EIR certificate. And we placed it there because it's 3/4 of the way through that MIPA process. Once you have the draft certificate on the DEIR, you know exactly where you're going. And we know anything else that the MIPA process might affect permits. So it enables us to immediately start the process with the Conservation Commission without having the MIPA process impact too much of the process with the commission with plan changes from other forums. We think that's going to be about a 4.5 month process when we get approval in September of 2025. And then the other last permit is DEP Waterways for a waterways license. We'd file that application in October of 2025, right parallel to receiving the MIPA certificate, anticipating a license in June of 2026. And there are some other permit processes at the bottom of this schedule that I'm not speaking to because right now, as we're seeing the project develop, we don't believe these permits are required, but we included them in the schedule so that if they did come up, we made sure we had them on the schedule so they could be obtained in the required time frame. That's the schedule.
That's it in a nutshell. This is going to be one of our main areas of focus, and maybe one other item that I think would be good for the committee to hear, and is when we anticipate having some public forums in and around the CNF filing. That's something that a few folks on this committee are going to help out with, but maybe that's a good item for them to hear as well.
So you have already had a tremendous amount of public forums and public input, and meetings that have been open to the public that have also been lot of the information is translated into languages other than English. It's required for MIPA. So we don't necessarily think that a public forum is required prior to submitting the ENF, but throughout the rest of the MIPA process, we will be seeking to have public forums. They're called environmental justice public forums because they're public forums to ensure that everyone in the community who meets an environmental justice classification gets a chance to speak. Basically, that's most of your community, and you guys already do a great job informing everyone, but it is a public forum for anyone to participate. It's just a required process by MIPA to be able to be documented to ensure adequate public involvement.
Thank you. And as we get a little closer to those, we'll talk a lot more about them as far as planning, but I figured it was worthy of mention to this group. There will be some, we'll be plopping some public forums down in this process as it becomes the right time to do so. Well, thank you, Anne. Any questions overall on schedule or permitting or items you'd like to know more about next month? And I'll look for hands. If not, that's really all we had tonight to present. So I will quickly see if we have any public comment, name and address for the record. If so, public comment going once, going twice. I do not see any hands. Quick other business. This is something, Nick, I know we talked about earlier, but thank you, Chris Chiaramella, for being here. There was a suggestion that maybe we go with double Chiaramellas on this committee and see if Chris becomes an actual member. I just wanted to throw that out there. We could talk about it further. I'll put it on the agenda for next month, but Chris has been involved with our bi-weekly meetings with Nick and Carl to go through site utilities, stormwater, drainage that have been happening in June and will continue to happen. And he's been a great resource for us and the project team. So I think it would probably make sense maybe that he becomes a formal member of this committee, but not my decision. Just wanted to throw it out there as new business.
Thank you, Brian. I'm glad that you had mentioned that. You know, we spoke about it a little earlier today. I think that as the current superintendent of Public Works, I think it's imperative that Chris be made a official member of the committee. I don't know if that requires a motion of any type, but if it does, so moved.
It just requires the approval of the mayor.
Okay.
So since he's not here, I'm sure, like all of us, he's going to think this is a fabulous idea and be very thankful to Chris for taking it on with us.
Well, two Chiaramellas will be better than one.
Yeah, I agree. I'll fire off an email to the mayor and just mention we talked about it. And at that point, we don't need a motion. We just have to update the roster with MSBA, which is just, you know, paperwork. It's not, they don't say no, is what I'm trying to say. They just want a current record. So I'll fire it off an email to the mayor and you, Dr. Kelly, that we talked about this, and we can make it official. We will add you, Chris, to future Zooms and CCs on meetings.
So Brian, in the roster, we do have to note that there is a SBC approval.
Oh, we do?
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we, should we follow through with the motion that was made now, even though the mayor's not here? Or do you think, Dr. Kelly?
I would make it contingent upon approval of the mayor's
approval. Yeah.
Okay. So how about, yeah, go ahead.
I'll reiterate, the motion is to add Chris Chiaramella to the school building committee, pending the authorization of the mayor.
Second.
So moved. Okay, second.
Who was that second? Sorry.
Michael Picardi.
Sounds good. On the motion, Mike Picardi.
Yes.
Stacy.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Dr. Kelly.
Yes.
Carl. Carl didn't hear you. Did we lose you?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Little
Chris.
delay.
Yes.
Rich Viscay is absent. Dawn.
Do
Absolutely.
I vote now that I'm a relative?
That would have been a very interesting no. I think you guys would have had to go meet for a beer if you voted no on that one.
You sustained.
Yeah. Nick.
Yes.
Mayor Keefe is absent. Tom is absent. John.
Yes.
Councilor Cogliandro.
Yes.
Dawn.
100% yes.
Thank you. And Josh.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. I will email the mayor and we can make that official. Any other new business from the committee?
Brian, I just wanted to give a little homework to somebody to go after what we're going to do. And I know this is a long way down the road, but it might require some thinking, is these stand-on, ride-on scooters that we're seeing showing up by the dozen at this school. Right now, we're kind of doing everything we can to keep them outside, and then we find them, sneaking them inside. And they are costly, and I don't think no one's going to be chaining them up to an exterior bike rack. So I just think there's some homework to be done, maybe in some other communities, other states, on what they're doing with them in new buildings, because I think Mr. Bowen could speak to this. We're seeing them double, triple, quadruple the numbers, and we really have no place to put them now, and it's only going to get a bigger problem.
I also think that the fire department explained to me at our most recent final fire drill of the year that I guess there's a city ordinance coming into play about these that changes how, even in residences, like large condo buildings and stuff, how they can be stored. And so I think that I'm not knowledgeable to speak to what those changes are, but I know that they do impact our ability to even have them in the building for fire code and stuff. So I think I'm happy to take that on, Carl, and kind of like connect with folks here and with fire and that, and kind of figure that out, because it's something we figure out for the fall, but it's also something we need to figure out for the building. So I'm happy to take that on.
Yeah. And I'll just add that I did talk to the fire chief and to Tom Swarsky about this, because Tom has been doing some research around that and bikes and transportation in general. But it's a concern that we have for all of our schools, all of the middles and the high schools, I should say. But definitely something we need to work in a plan on that.
Yeah, I think some I hate to say it, but some type of ordinance that says these aren't allowed in the building, and they're not allowed in any of the new buildings on the beach, and they're not allowed anywhere in Revere, is a little bit far-fetched. I think we really need to start looking at what we're going to do to house these things, because we're building bike paths and bike lanes and everything else to try to encourage this. And then we're going to put an ordinance saying you can't bring them in your house. So I think anything they do on an ordinance level is going to be overrun. If we put a sign outside right now that said you can't bring them in the building, we'd be finding them, in places that we don't want to find them. So, and I have that same concern with the parking garage. If they're going to start talking about, no electric cars with these batteries and things like that in these garages, that we really want to stay ahead of that curve. We can't just be telling teachers they can't bring in electric cars. So we got some homework to do as far as, we see, ordinance being drafted, but I think we have to really work on the reality of what we're seeing on the streets and what we're seeing happening. We're seeing 2 or 3 people riding these things at a time, and they're coming to school with them. So it's like Dr. Kelly said, the hill you die on, the next thing you know, we're going to be telling people you can't come to school today because how you got here. So there's some work to be done. That's why I'm bringing it up early, because, I don't think we're going to get anywhere telling people they can't ride these things or can't bring them to our buildings.
They just can't bring them in, Carl. The batteries are too dangerous. Even apartment buildings won't let them stay in buildings anymore, in condos.
Right,
an electric car battery is different.
I agree, but I think there's some research to be done. You got doctors going to the Mass General and bringing them inside the hospitals and things like that. They're expensive, and the reason I'm bringing it up is maybe there's some exterior part of the building that we can house these things and secure them and lock them up the way we do with, like bicycles, but give them a little bit of weatherization, protection, and things like that. That's why I'm not saying bring them in the building, but maybe build an outdoor shed type area that got some, weather protection and, maybe a place for them to charge and things like that. So at one point, this might be encouraged more than discouraged.
And this may be a good conversation to have with like parking meetings. We currently have a bike storage at the garage level, like indoor, lockable and secure. But if we're being told that the batteries for these or that they may not be able to be connected or part of the building, we may have to, like you are saying, look at a disconnected solution that protects regular bikes, electric scooters, whatever the future may bring as far as things with batteries. So we can, with Chris's research and information on ordinances and that sort of thing, we can work with our team as far as solutions. If you say to us, we need X amount, it can't be part of the building, or it can be at the garage level, we'll start to find solutions for this.
Good one. Good detail. Any other new business, committee?